CIO Association of Canada. I'd like to introduce our host, Derek Cullen. Derek is a CIO.D, the Leadership Development Director with the CIO Association of Canada, and the Chief Information Officer at Stikeman Elliott. He has over 30 years of strategic technology leadership and transformational success at top-tier consulting firms, Fortune 500 banks, and insurance companies. I'm also excited to welcome our speaker, Walid Hejazi. Among many other accomplishments, Walid is the academic director with the Rotman School of Management and a professor of economic analysis and policy. His research focuses on the development of strategies which enhance the ability of companies to compete in domestic and global marketplaces, and he has worked closely with many companies to develop and implement innovative strategies with a particular focus on the role of leaders in preparing those companies to lead strategic change. Walid, welcome.
It's great to be with you, and thank you for the opportunity. So welcome, everybody. And as Carolyn said, probably professor at Rotman. I've been a professor for 31 years. Every time I say that, I can't believe it. And I've been involved in executive programs from the very beginning. And I'm going to start by saying, I see what these programs can do for people. I see this as a real inflection point for many people's careers, but especially for those people that really, really lean in. And there's several themes I want to cover today. There's 5 themes in particular. But I just want to emphasize one because I think it runs through everything I want to say. There's a wonderful book by a lady named Rose Patton. She was the former head of HR at BMO, and she wrote this book called Intentional Leadership. And she talks about how many people think that just keep doing the same is going to get you to your potential. But she talks about how developing your leadership capabilities has to be part of an intentional process. Okay. Now, the one thing I want to say is 2 words that she said that I want to emphasize. And so these are the 2 themes. They're going to go through the 5 I'm talking about. Only if. Only if. What did she mean by that? She's been on, and just in her book, she's been on hundreds of promotion committee, so succession planning. And she said the worst thing she hears when they're deliberating on which candidate to choose to be the next CIO, CFO, CMO, or CEO, the 2 words she hates to hear is only if. You know, this person would have been perfect only if they had done this, or only if had they done that. And so that's kind of the idea about being intentional in your leadership development. And these programs, and this one in particular, is a demonstration of your commitment, or people that enroll in it, in your commitment to developing that leadership. So it can be a very important inflection point. It demonstrates your commitment. You learn a lot, you network a lot, which is what I want to talk about. So I have 5 themes I want to cover. Okay. The first one is the number 1 behavior that you can display in order to be promoted to that next level is to behave like that leader. But you have to be authentic. So what does that mean? Many people simply think, you know, I worked really, really hard. I became a director. I'm a senior manager. I'm the best at operations. I'm the best in my functional area. I can keep doing the same. And then once I get promoted, I can then adjust to the competencies I need for that new role. But that's not the case. And that's going to be linked to the next theme I'm going to talk about. But what you need to really display to people in your network, to leaders in your organization, is what does it truly mean to be a CIO in the context of what we're talking about today? What does it mean to be a CIO? Is that me echoing? Okay. All right. So what does it mean to be a CIO and to demonstrate to the people within the organization that you are CIO material? And you have to be authentic, which means that you have to truly understand, and this program delivers that. It really helps you understand how to transform yourself into a real leadership CIO type of individual that thinks about IT not from an operational or management perspective, but truly from a business perspective. And this term that we have in the program is having a seat at the table. You want to be able to position yourself to sit with the C-level executives to really understand not IT as an afterthought to support the business, but IT as a business driver. So number one is you have to behave like a CIO. You have to demonstrate you understand what it truly means, and you have to be authentic. That's the first theme. The second theme is the following. Okay. Can I ask somebody? I'm just going to point at someone and ask them. I don't know who to ask. Susan, I'm going to ask you, Susan. What percentage of CIO positions do you think are filled before they're advertised, Susan?
99%.
Yeah, almost all of them. I knew I picked the right person. Thank you, Susan. But the idea is that, I interview a lot of senior executives in all of our programs. So as academic director at Rotman, I oversee all of our non-degree programs. So this program and 100 others. And I always interview senior executives. And they say, your number one challenge is to get on that list of preferred candidates for that promotion. Your job is to get on that preferred list. So what'll happen is for every senior position, they have a preferred candidate list. They kind of know who they're going to hire, but nothing's for sure. And I wouldn't say 99. I would say it's pretty high, very high, like 80%, 85%. As you go more and more senior, it goes to 99. So what are the two implications? I'm telling you right now that the vast majority of these senior positions are filled before they're advertised. Jeff, what does that mean for you? For an individual working in an organization at whatever position, knowing that the vast, vast majority of positions are filled before they're advertised. There's two implications for each individual. What are they?
The first one that comes to mind is that you have to be noticed.
There you go. Beautiful. Actually, you know what? I like your answer better than mine. Yours is good. I'm going to change mine to your answer because the two that I have, but yours is better. Thank you, Jeff. I have to redo my slides now, but the idea is number one, the most important is networking. People have to know who you are, and you have to network with the right people. But secondly, and perhaps more importantly, is your personal brand. So you have to network. People have to know who you are. But secondly, is your personal brand. And your personal brand has two pieces. The personal brand has the hard side and the soft side. The hard side is you got to know stuff. When you interact with people and they ask you about AI, you can't be a PhD in AI. You can't know everything, but you have to know stuff. And this program leans heavily into that. This program teaches you so much about what it means to be a CIO in so many of the different dimensions. So, number one, networking. People have to know who you are. Number two is your personal brand. Your personal brand has two pieces. The hard side, you got to know stuff. But the soft side is something called EQ. So Daniel Goleman, who's a leading thinker in this area, talks about EQ or emotional intelligence and talks about how 90%, 90% of the difference between the top leader and the average leader, that's explained by EQ. So things like empathy, having social skills, self-awareness, all of these things. I test people on this, and people always overestimate what other people think of them. So that's my second theme. The second theme is, in order to get promoted, you have to be noticed, you have to network, but your personal brand matters. And this program helps with all of that because you network with a whole bunch of like-minded people. You develop your knowledge, you learn a lot. So when people ask you about vendor selection, when people ask you about outsourcing, when people ask you about digital transformation, when people ask you about leadership, you understand what's going on and you're able to give that response. Okay? So the program allows you to learn a lot about what it takes to truly be an effective CIO. It also allows you to network with a whole network of forward-looking CIOs. I can't tell you the number of programs I've been involved with where I have lunch with people 1 or 2 or 5 years later, and they still tell me how opportunities developed between or among people in the class. So you build these networks that are incredibly important. So that's the second theme. Okay. The third theme, which really builds on the previous two themes, especially the first one about acting like a CEO, there's a huge difference between being a manager and being a leader. And I just can't tell you how far off many people are in that understanding. People can say they understand it, but I have this assessment I give people, and I've given it in the last 3 offerings of the CIO program. And what it uncovers is that people often think they understand what leadership activities are, but they're spending so much time on management level activities. So understanding, really to think about the CIO role about leading digital transformation, not just managing IT. So how do you lead digital transformation within your organization? Having a seat at the table with the C-level, really understanding how digital transformation can enable the business, not simply manage the operations. It's a different kind of thinking. And it's that change in mindset that our time together works on, is really to get to help you understand the difference between being a manager and being a leader. Please don't think, I worked really hard in my career and I got to this point, and I'm just going to continue working hard, and it's going to allow me to become the CIO or a more senior leader. That's not the way it works. Now, there is one senior executive I interviewed, and I asked the question, how did your life change when you became a more senior leader? And he said something, and everyone in the class said, I want that role. But what he said was, as I became more senior in my position, I did less and less. And people said, well, I like that job. That's what I want. I want to do less and less. And what he meant by that was he did less of the operational things, the firefighting things, all of those kinds of things. I let all of those things go, and I started thinking about things from across different silos and segments of the organization. Because as you move to a more senior role, you're no longer involved in those managerial functions. Okay. Now this is best encapsulated by the CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai. He said it perfectly. Leadership is learning to let go and really empowering people at all levels of the organization and trusting them to do the right thing. Leadership is learning to let go and really empowering people at all levels of the organization and trusting them to do the right thing. Okay. So as I said, there's this exercise I do in the CIO program. And what it does is it tests you. It tests the participants to say, are you focusing on leadership activities, or are you focusing on managerial or operational activities? And the consensus was, and I have this number, 13.3 hours was the average over 100 participants in the CIO program were saying, I'm trying to move into a more senior role. I'm trying to do this transformation away from being a manager, doing things right, to being a leader, doing the right things. But I always get pulled back. And I'm just going to read a list of things that these people that are trying to move into the C-level, into the CIO role, because remember the first lesson, remember the first theme of today. The first theme of today is to be promoted, you have to be seen as a CIO. You don't want to be seen as the director of IT. So you're trying to develop these competencies and display these competencies that, hey, I'm a CIO, but I keep getting pulled back into the operations. And here are the number one answers I got from offering this actually 20 times in different programs, but 3 times in the CIO program, putting out fires either within operations or with vendors. That's the number one thing where people get pulled back in. Number 2, vendor meetings with no purpose, when vendors are just checking in, or trying to sell you more stuff. Number 3, bogged down by too many administrative tasks. And the list goes on. So theme number 1 is you have to be seen as the CIO. You have to move away from those operational things and focus in on those leadership competencies. But theme number 3 is there's a difference between a manager and a leader, and too many times these people get pulled back into the managerial role and you get stuck there. Okay? That's the 3rd theme. The 4th theme of today, okay? In many of the interviews that I have with senior executives, and I say, you were promoted, what were those things that we prepared you for? That we prepared you for well, and what are the things that we didn't prepare you for? And there's so many things that I can prepare you for as a leader. You're going to have difficult conversations, motivating people, managing distributed team, all that stuff we can prepare you for. But there's a bunch of stuff we can't prepare you for. So the one thing that resonates with me is these people talk about frameworks. They talk about, during the program, Walid, that we took at Rotman, there's these frameworks you taught us. And I really absorbed them and integrated them into the way I do things. Why that's important is that whenever you come up with a scenario that you're not comfortable with, or you haven't planned for, you don't know how to respond to, shooting from the hip often results in something you regret. By having these frameworks, they really allow you to approach these challenges in a more systematic way. So there's 2 frameworks or 3 frameworks I can highlight. I'm not teaching them here. I'm just telling you about them. But you think about Michael Watkins' incredible book called The First 90 Days. If you haven't read it, you should. If you haven't read it, you should. It's unbelievable, the most highly cited book, and it talks about how managers become leaders. And he talks about the 7 mind shifts that you have to go through to move from being that, director of IT from an operational role into that more strategic CIO C-level thinking. And the 7 are from a specialist to a generalist, from an analyst to an integrator, from a tactician to a strategist, from a problem solver to agenda setter, from a bricklayer to an architect, from a warrior to a diplomat, and supporting cast to leading roles. So these are the 7 seismic shifts. And so many people I've talked to integrate these into the way they do things that really help them to be more effective leaders within organizations. I'm going to list 2 more, but there's so many other frameworks. The 2 others are Porter's 5 Forces. Anyone who does an MBA or an executive MBA, this is the heart of strategy. And you think about how IT can be a strategic enabler within the strategic and Porter's 5 Forces model to really enable good strategic choices. And the other one is Barney's VRIO framework. I only raise these to say there's all of these frameworks out there that have been tested. They've been tested in ways to show how you can be a more effective leader. Now, remember my first theme. The first theme is if you want to be promoted, you have to demonstrate those capabilities. They're not going to give you that CIO role and say, develop your capabilities afterwards. You have to demonstrate them in advance. So the first theme is you have to behave like a CIO. The second theme is 90% of these jobs are filled before they're advertised. So you have to network You have to build your personal brand. I don't remember the third one. Okay. The third one was there's a difference between being a manager and a leader. So very important. The fourth one is really about integrating those frameworks into your thinking. Now, the final one, I think, threads through everything. The final one is your leadership development must be intentional. This doesn't matter what role you're in or where you're at within an organization. Enrolling in a program like this, number one, demonstrates your commitment to that leadership development. But secondly, underscores that you actually have a plan. And it's a cliche, fail to plan, plan to fail. But Rose Patton in her book, she talks about intentional leadership. And there's a guy named Simon Sinek. And this is a simple analogy, but it's so appropriate. Simon Sinek has this analogy where he says, a lot of people go to an executive offsite. They get a certificate from a great business school and they put it on their wall. They say, now I'm a leader. Not the way it works. And he talks about getting in shape physically. Because to get in shape physically, it's not like going to the gym once or twice or intensively for a week or a month. It's about systematic in developing your skills and your discipline. He also talks about getting good teeth. Many people brush their teeth, not as often as they should, and they think that before they go to the dentist, they can floss and brush their teeth and they're good to go. To get good teeth, you have to be systematic. Leadership is no different. Leadership is no different. You have to demonstrate your leadership capabilities. You have to develop them over time. And this idea that somehow I worked really hard and I became the director of IT, if I continue to work hard, I'm going to become the CIO. It's not the way it works. The way it works is you have to demonstrate that you know what a CIO is. You have to understand what it means to have a seat at the table with the C-level executives, where you're helping people understand IT, not as an operational table stakes activity the organization has to do. You leave that to the managers and the IT people, but truly how IT can be a business enabler and can help transform the business. So as Rose Patton wrote in her book, intentional leadership, your leadership journey must be intentional. So that runs through all 5 of the themes that I talked about today. And enrolling in a program like this demonstrates your commitment to your leadership development. It allows you to develop an incredible network with like-minded people. It allows you to learn a lot, but it also puts you on that journey where your leadership can be intentional and can open doors that otherwise wouldn't be open. And with that, I will stop, even though I can go on for another hour. I guess, Derek, back over to you.
Walid, that was a lot. Thank you so much. I think that was super informative for everyone who joined. And thank you very much, everyone, for joining and hearing Walid's passion. And I think many of us here, Lorraine, myself, Carolyn, have some passion around this program. And there are, I think, actually about 3 people who are previous graduates of the program on this call. So that's super great to see everyone still engaged. And to that point, I think I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, Walid. And you talked about the importance of building your brand and making sure people are aware of you and how that's a differentiator in the market for a aspiring CIO or a CIO. Could you talk a little bit about the process during the up and coming cohort and how that network really, because I think that the graduates really become a network onto itself. Could you talk a little bit about the process during the course that sort of builds those alliances and the method that the Rotman's professors use that really sort of bonds everybody?
Yeah. Well, can I start by saying something uncomfortable, Derek?
Yeah, go ahead.
I have your permission, right? So get ready.
Yep.
The last thing you want is to be the person when you put your hand up, everybody says, oh no, not you again. That's why I always tell people when you come into these programs, You want to be prepared. And that's why, Carolyn, Derek, Lorraine, the whole team, thank you for this opportunity. When you come into this program, you're building your network with all of these people. And you know the saying better than I do, first impressions. You want people to see you as someone they want to work with. I can give you 100 stories in executive programs where networks help you when you don't know it, and networks bite you when you don't know it. So when you come into a program like this, for example, you should do all of the pre-reading. And just remember, I'm going to ask one question. I'm going to ask someone to put their hand up and tell me who thinks they're the busiest person in this room. Who is it? Is it you, Chris? Okay, open your mic.
Everyone.
Open your mic, Chris. I have a question for you, Chris. Are you busy?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question for you, Chris. If I gave you an 8th day of the week, so Chris had an 8th day and no one else did but Chris, could you fill it and still not get your work done?
Oh, absolutely. Email would still be full.
This is the point. The point is about prioritizing. And this idea that you can do everything, and that's why this idea about being a manager versus a leader is so important. You have to focus in on the high value thing. So coming directly to your question, Derek, you want to come to the class well prepared and thoughtful, and having thought about the material and so on, so you don't come in totally cold. So what do we do at Rotman, right? It's incredibly interactive. When I teach, I call people out all the time, not to be mean, but I like to call people out. And you know what I love to say? I love to say, I knew I picked the right person. So Chris, I knew I picked the right person when I went to you. You don't want to be the person that comes up with the answer that's totally off the mark because you're double tasking, or you haven't done the pre-reading, or you weren't paying attention. The work's always going to be there. And there's one other thing I always say, and Derek, you brought up TD earlier. In the executive MBA, the big benefit is networking. You learn a lot, but it's networking. And a bunch of people on their break, what do? On the break, they run up to the hall and they call the office instead of networking. And I always say to them, do you think TD Bank is going to collapse because Frank didn't make a call on his break? Really? So the idea is you want to be all in. The program is there for your development. The business is not going to collapse. You have to be all in, well rested and prepared. We call you out. It's very interactive. But the second thing that we do is we do lots of breakouts where we mix up the group. So you're not in the same group each time. And you go into these breakouts and you answer these tough questions, and then you come back and present. And it's lovely to see how people connect. That's the second thing. The third thing is we have these events, and Derek, you could speak to this more than I can, where we bring together the alumni of the program, but I can speak to all of the other programs that we have, where these networks that you create, they last a long, long time. So your role is to come to the program, to lean in and focus. The other stuff can wait. Your business is not going to collapse because you're in class for 3 hours. Focus, learn as much as you can, be thoughtful, and in your interactions during the breakouts and class discussion, you want to be present. Now, there's one other thing I'm going to say, and I don't mean to say it like, I don't mean to criticize anybody, but when you're in class, you should have your camera on. You should be present. And there's been times where I've called people out who don't have their camera on. It turns out they're not there. So you want to be all in, and then these programs, if you lean in, these programs can really, really pay off. Thank you, Pardeep. Okay, back to you, Derek.
Excellent. Yeah, I thank you, Walid. I mean, an attestation to the network. We have an after community, I'll call it. There's almost 100 of us now who've gone through the program in the last 2 years, and it's growing and it's gathering steam for sure. And I've seen all kinds of great collaboration after the program with the designates. People, as some of you know, when you get to the C-level, one of the bad parts about it is you're probably at some point in time going to experience job loss. At the C-level, sometimes jobs come and go, and so I've seen this network help people already find their next placement. I've seen this network help people who are drafting theorems around AI and transformation. So I think a big part of this Rotman and CIOCAN program and sort of the aftercare that's provided is this amazing network that you become part of. And hopefully we don't all get fired when we become senior IT directors, but it does happen sometimes. Fired is probably not the right word.
And just on that point though, Derek, I mean, you raise like such an important point is I teach my kids this. Networking is about building relationships. It's not about talking to people when you need something.
Mhm.
And the idea is that you have to be building these relationships all the time because disruptions happen and lots of people lose positions. I mean, the banks are laying off a lot of people right now, and those people that have not networked are incredibly disadvantaged. So Derek, that's a very important point.
Yeah, like imagine, your CEO or the board comes to you and says, "We're hearing a lot of rumbling about, all these tariffs and cross-border issues. What should we be doing with our mobile phone? Should we be doing anything for our employees?" You now have 80 people in a community you can reach out to you didn't have before, or 100 people. I mean, you might have a community of 3 or 4 people or 5 people, but this is an amazing group and a sounding board that comes out of this program. So I think it's very, very cool. And I have a unique opportunity to embarrass Karen or Winnie right now with a question that I'm going to throw to either one of you. Just like 6 to 12 months after graduation, what has transpired for either one of you? What are some good things you think that have come out of achieving the designation and taking the program? Either one of you, if you have an answer. But as Walid would say, it has to be a good answer.
Oh, you make it difficult, yeah. So I'll go first and then I'll pass. I would say the personal branding has changed for me for sure, because I sat with, I requested the executive coach, and I worked with her to create a personal brand, as Walid was saying. That has made a difference for me. I'm not at C-level yet. I'm still a VP, but the personal brand for sure has changed. And can I answer the first question that you asked at the beginning, that why are you here? Two reasons. When Walid speak, I show up because I had 2 courses with him, definitely show up. The other one is that in the invitation you guys said Friday, August the 13th. So I said, like, I must be there. Like, I don't know how, but Friday, August the 13th is a good day to be there in that twilight zone.
There you go.
Did you get it? One of
Yeah,
the
I got it.
invitation
I got
was
it.
wrong.
I get
One
it.
of the one of the invitation was wrong, but that's fine. I mean, I showed up in the wrong day, in a correct day, let's say.
Well, I appreciate you coming, Karen, and I love the answer. Thank you very much. How about you, Winnie? Winnie?
Hi. I just wanted to echo what Karen said about Walid speaking. I mean, I jumped on this and made sure it was in my calendar, so because I love when he was teaching during the Rotman course. For me, I took this because it was really at a change and inflection point for me in terms of my career. So, I have been director of IT for a while, but in a small team, and we've grown. And now I'm in the middle of actually developing the IT strategy for our organization. And and now I've got support. I have a manager of IT now. So exactly just, on point, and Walid was talking about transitioning from operations to leadership. This really helped me put this into perspective. Like, it was just perfect timing for this. So
Wonderful. I'm very happy you're getting the support in the workplace that you need, Winnie. That's excellent. Excellent story.
Can I say one more thing, Derek? First of all,
Of course.
Winnie and Karen, you're too kind. Thank you so much for those kind words. You've made my head go bigger. So thank you for that. But when we talk about AI and generative AI, and ChatGPT 5 just came out, and the one thing from the press release that really got my attention was it actually waits longer before it responds because it wants to think about the right answer. Why do I bring that up? The IMF has a highly cited report that says 60%, 60% of jobs in the developed world, Canada, are going to be impacted by AI, 40% negatively, which means you have to be prepared. And there's one thing that, we talk about in this program and all of the things we're talking about today. It helps you future-proof your career. Nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed. But if disruption comes your way, having the confidence, the knowledge, the networks, the social skills that you develop from this program really helps you in a period of significant disruption. So a program like this is more important today than ever. I'll go back to you, Derek.
Thank you, Walid. I was going to turn it over to the attendees, especially anyone who has not taken the program. See if you have any questions for Walid or I or Lorraine or Carolyn about the program in general.
I would I would just reiterate that everybody on this call works hard, except me, but everybody works hard and lots of hours. I know that. And I know that, if I gave you an extra day of the week, you could fill it and you work hard, but you have to be intentional in your development. And this program can help you in the world of CIOs or chief data officers or chief AI officers. This program can really help you develop those competencies. I encourage all of you to really think hard about where you're at today, where you want to be in 3 to 5 years, and to develop a plan or a strategy. The one thing I can prove is you will be better off with a strategy or a plan to go forward. And I believe if you're in the world of CIOs, this program will help you achieve the goals that you lay out for yourself. If you come to the program, you want to be all in, you want to lean in to get as much as you can from it, build an incredible network and just learn a lot. Sorry for interrupting there, Derek, but I had to say that.
No, I'm completely aligned with, the topic, Walid. So no one really has any questions. I'm curious, is there anyone who hadn't heard of this program at Rotman's and is sort of new to the entire topic? Assuming it's basically word of mouth, where all of you have heard about this. One little assignment I might try, just so you get an idea for the types of people from all walks of technology that graduate from this program. If you get a chance, go on LinkedIn and do a bit of a search for the designation CIO.D, and you'll see all the walks of society and life that technology leaders come from to take this program. Every vertical, you name it, municipalities, police forces, banking, law firms like myself. It's quite a great community and growing fast. So not many questions. That means you nailed it, Walid, as usual. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Anything? Yeah.
But what I should do is I should just call out 5 people, ask them hard questions, and decide whether to let them in right now. Should I do that, Derek?
I think you should take it easy on them. It is lunch hour. Many of us haven't even gotten our lunch yet because we really wanted to hear you, Walid. So
and the one thing I would say for anyone who's around the Rotman School, if you ever just want to come by for a coffee and have a chat, just reach out to me. You've got my contact. I'm happy to chat with you about this program. I really, really believe in executive programs. Going back to this one point, I can't stress it enough. It's not just about doing more and more of the same. It's about being strategic and thinking about your leadership development. I believe in these I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't. I see how these are inflection points in people's careers if you embed it in a plan on how to move forward. So I hope to see you all in the program when it begins in September. Back to you, Derek.
I think that wraps it, Walid. If there are no other questions.
Yeah.
I encourage people to get on to the CIOCAN website and have a look at when our dates are for the next cohort. There's one in September. And Carolyn, you wanted to wrap up for us?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, both of you. That was fantastic. I in no way, shape, or form qualify for the program, but listening to you, Walid, I want to take it. That was just fantastic. Thank you so much. So for those of you that may not know, the Rotman-CIOCAN CIO Executive Leadership Program is a 5-week online program. They meet twice a week for 3 hours for each session. The next one begins on Monday, September 15th, and runs through Friday, October 17th, followed by the final exam on November 19th. We will send you some additional information following this session and include the recording. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you again, Walid and Derek. That was a fantastic session, and we look forward to seeing some of you in the program. Have a lovely afternoon.
Bye, everyone.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.